Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from OurSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uwayama. Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, October 10th. Notre Dame's got Stanford coming into Notre Dame Stadium off of the bye. We're going to see if Notre Dame is going to take some steps as a football team, right? I think they are a good football team right now. I think they want to get to a great football team. Whether it's realistic or not, that is the goal. And so that's what they're going to try to do. We're going to talk about ways that they can do that. And then we're going to talk about some offensive stuff because I think that's where Notre Dame is kind of lacking in the great football team kind of conversation. So we're going to talk about the offense on first down, what they can do to be a more explosive team, things of that nature, and then get some news and notes from the Marcus Freeman press conference that's going on right now, and then anything that comes up in the chat. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so whenever it is we are going to go live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, this show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing. With the holiday season approaching fast, it always comes faster than you think, Jamie. It's just like 1 second, you think to yourself, I have plenty of time. The next second, you have like 2 weeks to get all the things you want to get. ESQ wants you to get a jump on it. ESQ, of course, is founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2024, from a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for galas and holiday events. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD to get 10% off your entire purchase. Give yourself or your loved ones the gift of style. Rajon says we're up to 8 likes already. This is a good start. We're off to a fast start, just like everyone hopes Notre Dame gets off to a fast start this weekend. Let's see. Marcus Freeman is talking to the media right now. Mentioned the Jaylen Sneed situation walking off the field before the alma mater. He said he wasn't aware, and he said it's basically a non-issue. He had 2 really good weeks of practice. So Jaylen Sneed wants to be great, and he wants to be a good part of the football program. I think maybe he was mad, or maybe, who knows? It could be any number of things. But if it's not a problem, he's still in good standing with the team, and the team is in still good standing with him. Hopefully we see good play from Jaylen Sneed going forward. Jamie, how you doing this morning? Or this afternoon, I should say. Your afternoon, morning for me, afternoon for you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I mean, I would say the one thing with that Sneed thing, and not to say that I would be surprised if he didn't actually know that it happened, but good way of deflecting and pretending that it's not a big deal. But I think ultimately it kind of is not a big deal if he did come out and practice and they talk to him and then whatever and everything's fine and he's still, doing everything he needs to do, because I think it's one of those things where there's so much of that stuff happens where no one sees it. And that just happened to be where a lot of people saw it. And that's the thing.
Yeah, like he walked off and the media is all right there.
Yeah,
it's everyone's going to see it.
It was not good timing. Yeah.
Not good timing, but I mean, maybe he was just mad at the moment. Like I did notice that he was supposed to be in on that last 4th down play, and then they took him out, and then he didn't like that he got taken out. It seemed like, and maybe he was just mad at that moment. And then it's like, hey, I was mad, and then I, blew off some steam. I went to the locker room, and it's fine. Like he could have thrown a tantrum on the field, and that would have been bad too. Like, hey, let me just go into the locker room and be mad where no one is around. That's a totally fair take as well. So that's that. Jamie, Stanford this weekend. There's been a lot of fun Notre Dame Stanford games in the recent past. This latest Stanford game where they were at Notre Dame Stadium, Stanford won the game, which was a very bad performance from Notre Dame. And it was a performance that was kind of out of nowhere in the context of that season. They had the bad, they lost, started 0-2, had the uneven game against Cal. Then you had the really good game offensively, especially against North Carolina. Then you had a nice win against BYU, and everyone feels like, all right, upward trajectory. And then they go and lay an egg against Stanford at home at night. I think that sort of thing is always in play, right? It just fans have to be aware of it. But just kind of a big picture view of this particular Stanford team and this particular Notre Dame team. Are your antennas up for something like that in 2024?
No, not to that point. I mean, like I've kind of always said that Stanford can be frisky because I think Troy Taylor's a really good coach. I actually think their defensive coordinator, Bobby April III, he's a good coach too. Like, they have a good staff. They don't have the players, so I think that's the biggest thing. And then also too, because they've had injuries. It sounds like Ashton Daniels will be back for the game, so that helps them.
Yeah,
certainly, but
it's necessary.
He's also 120th in QBR, so he's not having a great season. He hasn't been a good passer. He's he does some things well and he does some things not very well, and so unless he becomes the guy who's completely out of character, has he has the reverse Connor Wigman game against Notre Dame, then it's really hard for me to imagine them doing really well on that side of the ball, considering how they've been all year, considering that they're probably very likely going to be without their starting center, who was their best offensive lineman. They already are kind of they have a lot of weaknesses up front. That's a real thing. They're probably going to be out with that. People are worried about that freshman back who had the 122 yards against Clemson right at the end of the game. I mean, he hurt his foot, ankle, whatever. Like, it didn't look like the kind of thing where he'd be back this week. So, and they said, oh, he's questionable, which we kind of know how questionable.
We know what
goes.
that means. Yeah.
And then, and I just think that too, that game, I hate really bringing up like old wounds in terms of like Drew Pine and just him being especially bad in that game, but he completed 48% of his passes.
He was especially bad, like really not good.
He was especially bad, and people didn't think that he was going to be that bad after he had played well for a couple weeks, right? So I think that was kind of the reality check. Then the other thing is, like, Riley Leonard could go revert back to whatever, but he can still run. Yeah. And so it's like that. So that's why I just don't see it. I don't see Stanford being good enough to pull off an upset in this context. I don't think it's the same thing.
It is different. I mean, I think the way that it happens against this team that we've seen already is you have a chance to if Stanford can get out to a lead, right, and then Notre Dame has a couple empty trips, and things get they get nervous in the stadium, right? And we've seen that before. But like you said, and Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago, brings up a good point here. 2 trips to the East Coast for Stanford and then a tough home game. Now they're going back to South Bend. They might be exhausted. They probably are. There's a little bit of fatigue there on their team. And Notre Dame's famously coming off a bye, right? That we've been talking about it a bunch. So it is difficult. I will say, like, watching the tape, right? They do fun stuff offensively. Like they have a lot of motion. They do this motion like with the tight end, like he starts to move like right before the snap. It's very disorienting as a defender. It usually doesn't go like that. So they do that. They do a lot of they have multiple options of the same kind of zone read type of play with that tight end motion. They have a couple ways to beat you with that stuff. Alec Iomenor is a dude. I mean, he's very talented. He's very physically skilled. It's funny, like we were watching that. We had a chance to watch tape of the Syracuse game. I feel like they left so much meat on the bone with him. Like they, for whatever reason, they just cannot connect on the things that they want to do with him, which is weird because if you want to be in sync with any player on that team, you want it to be him because he's the one that can do real damage. I mean, he has like an incredible one-handed catch in the end zone for a touchdown on what was as like a kind of a wheel route, and it was not a great throw, but he goes up one-handed, brings it in, and gets 2 feet in bounds. He's a real dude. He's a real guy. Wouldn't shock me if they move the ball a little bit in this game. I think they will move the ball a little bit in this game. But Notre Dame they don't give up a bunch of touchdowns to anyone, right? I think the most they've given up this year is 3, and that was to Louisville. So, and 2 of those, like one of the, one you're on the 9-yard line, and the other one's on 24. It's hard to score touchdowns against Notre Dame. Let's focus on Notre Dame's offense here. You wrote a bunch about Notre Dame's offense and 6 thoughts on a Thursday today. And I think it's really good stuff. And you talked about how Mike Denbrock was saying on first down, they're just kind of a bad team on third down. He said average. I think to me in this context, average is just kind of bad. What talk about that, and then we're going to talk about some of the solutions that Notre Dame's got that they could go with.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he said they've been average as dirt on first down. Love that quote. A very Mike Denbrock type of quote. And I guess if you take it in the context of like they've run the ball okay they've averaged 5.24 yards per carry on first down. Like that's good. Like that's fine. That's you'll take that any day. But passing, they've been putrid, right? And especially when you consider so they have 4.7 YPA, yards per attempt on first down, and that's just gross. Like it's bad in any down, but it's horrible. And they produce only 5 first downs by throwing on first down, which is insanely bad. Like that is actually dead last with Air Force. They're tied dead last in the country with Air Force in getting first downs passing on first down. So that means like they're not creating any kind of like, definitely not any explosive plays, right? They're not, hitting anything like intermediate. They're not like running play. They're not like running a screen and hitting anything good. Like they're just not doing anything. Like the execution there has been bad. And, we kind of talked just briefly before the podcast about how like, because it's something that Marcus Freeman said and Mike Denbrock said too, right? Is that they don't want to be in third and long, right? And obviously because that has been a problem, right? It's been a problem. They've had far too many third and longs, but you also don't want to have, you do a little like free access and you gain 3 yards. Like that's worse than you might as well just run the ball, right? Like you don't want that. Like that is not worth it. You run a screen, you get 2 yards. Like that's a failure. I mean, it is by, when we're talking about expected points added, right? It's
success rate, things of that nature.
Success rate, all that.
It's a failure play. Yeah. And to your point, like Notre Dame has like 5 first downs throwing on first. They have 28 completions. Yeah. It's not like they're not completing passes on first down.
5.2% for Leonard.
Yeah.
On first down. Like you should be way more successful. Yeah. You should be way more successful, right? That's a huge issue. And I don't know how much like they looked into that because obviously third down is obviously a problem for them too. But like if you're having so many first down failures, obviously he brought up how they were average as dirt, so they're aware, but there has to be more there. You can't complete like that, average of passes. Like 65.2% is a good percentage. It's not great, it's good, and not have more success. Like that's just that's a problem. That's a big problem, and they need to have more chances to gain yards after the catch. They need to probably throw the ball down the field further, right? The average depth of target. Yeah, we don't have the exact number on that, but I can guarantee you it's probably like well under 5 yards. Like
yeah, like their average per completion. So not yards per attempt. Like average per completion is under 8 yards on a completed pass, right? And so like that's average. I mean, you're
yeah,
like it just like it goes to show like Mike Denbrock is, where average is dirt on first down. Well, if your quarterback's completing 65% of the time and you're not good, then I don't want to get into like it's not a blame thing. It's just like, well, you have the answer to that, right? Like you are the coordinator. You're calling the plays. It'd be one thing if they were completing like 50% of the time or like 45% of the time. Then it's like, hey, there are opportunities that you're just not hitting. At 65%, you're doing just fine with what they're calling. You need to push the ball down the field in order to be a more successful. And when we say push the ball down the field, I'm not talking about throwing a go. I'm talking about hitting a curl,
yes,
hitting your out routes. Like I'm not talking about explosive game here. I'm talking about curls, outs, digs, things of that nature. And they're not hitting those. And they're not
yeah.
even really trying. That's another thing we were talking about.
Okay,
They're not really trying to hit those.
Here's a perfect example. Like, in a similar situation where the line was not good, right? In 2021, the line was not good. They couldn't hold up. They really, really struggled. And obviously, now I would say, considering all the injuries and stuff, this is now a much worse situation than 2021 on the offensive line. I think that's fair to say. Would you agree with that?
To this point, like, yes.
To this point,
yeah,
I'm not saying that they can't get better.
At the same point in 2021, it was worse. It's worse now because once 2021 got figured out, then it was like, okay, like they have, Josh Luck was a serviceable player. Kane Madden was no great shakes, but he was probably Rocco Spindler level. Jarrett Patterson was, a good player.
Good. Yeah.
Kristofic was probably Pendleton level at that point. And then you had Joe Alt, who was a revelation.
Yeah.
So yeah,
who was better than Knapp as a freshman?
He is better for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, and I think obviously early on in the year when you're rotating all those left tackles,
right, when they didn't have things figured out at all, it was
that was worse.
That was worse. Yeah.
So and we'll have to see where it progresses from here, because this is like really 5 games in was the inflection point for them where they put Alt in the lineup.
Yeah.
And Kristofic came in and whatever. So that was the thing. So we'll have to see. And obviously, I mean, it's not encouraging that, Matt said that Billy Schrauth doesn't look close to playing. So that's not an option for them going forward. So they're not getting help anytime soon, or like at least they're not getting help this week and probably not next week either. Right. So they might not get it before the next bye based on that. So who knows? But I think one of the things, so getting back to the point about 2021, is the average depth of target went way down. And the time and like the quick game stuff they did with Jack Cohn, they changed it. And all of a sudden they just said like, hey, we can't drop back and do this stuff. We have to RPO it. We have to do this stuff. And to be fair, Cohn is a much more, he's a better thrower than Leonard, more accurate, no doubt, right? But they were able to do stuff where all of a sudden they're getting like 8 yards on like an RPO, just like free access out or something, right? To the field, where they don't, and then maybe Kevin Austin is like making a guy miss and turn it into 14 or something, right? Like that's not happen. That's something that they kind of need to have. They need to have happen without even saying like pushing the ball down the field more, whether it's slants, whatever, something where you're doing stuff to gain more, yards there. And I understand you are severely limited by the line, like, but you're also going to play teams now And I think it would be a huge mistake to go back to kind of what they did versus NIU, where you're dropping back as much as that. And that's not Riley Leonard's game. That's not probably what's best suited for Notre Dame. But you're also not going to play pass rushes that are as good as Louisville's or, Texas A&M going forward. Yeah. So you have to kind of adjust somewhat to do it. And I think it's worth pointing out, and I pointed it out in 6 Thoughts, that Stanford and Georgia Tech specifically are much better against the run than they are the pass. And so I think what we need to see from the offense, no one is expecting, or no one should be expecting the offense to break out and all of a sudden be like, man, all of a sudden, Riley Leonard, get that first round hype going up again, because they're throwing the ball down the field. All of a sudden, Chris Mitchell is like, putting up those FIU numbers, whatever. No one should expect that. I think, if anything like that happened, it would be like almost shocking, right? Yeah. If it happened, not just a surprise, it would be a shock. But you're playing teams that are bad against the pass. Stanford and Georgia Tech, both bad against the pass. You have to be able to take advantage of that. So Georgia Tech, 117th in EPA per dropback, 111th in passing success rate, 100th in opponent passer rating against the FBS opponents. So Stanford, 114th in passing success rate, 115th in opponent passing rate. Like, it's a bad pass defense. Like, and then even if we're talking about, so specifically, first down, 97th in opponent passer rating for Stanford on first down, 8.6 yards per attempt. Georgia Tech, 99th, 8.2 yards per attempt. Like, they're selling out a lot of times to sell the run, and believe me, they will do it again this game.
Yeah.
You got to be able to take advantage of it. You have to just, and it's not to say that, you should have the expectation that Notre Dame's going to pass for, 12 yards per attempt in this game. Like, if that happened, I'd be like, oh, man, I didn't see that coming. But should you be able to get that, like, average that you're doing against them, like an 8.0 YPA in this game, I feel like you should be able to do it. Like, if you can't, like, I mean, because then what are you going to do against better pass defense? Like, you got to be able to exploit teams with verified weaknesses. Weaknesses. Yeah.
Check your cord. I think it's rubbing the cord on your. I think it's on your headphones, or something's rubbing, and there's a little noise. Sorry. Yeah. I think. Well, okay. So since we brought 2021, something that did happen is post-bye, that offense figured some stuff out. They changed the way they did things, and that was immediately after the bye, right? And then that offense became just a totally different type of offense. Like you said, suddenly they were efficient. Suddenly they were scoring points. That was coincided with the fact that, like, they got to play USC, and then they got to play North Carolina, and then they got to play Virginia's terrible defense, right? And they got to play a bunch of bad defenses on the back end there. And like Stanford and Georgia Tech, like, these are not good defenses that they're going to come up against. And so I think they will have the opportunity to create some kind of, more openings in the passing game. The other part is like, there's so much, whenever they pass, it seems like, it's like, to your point, they don't want to get in third and long, right? And the fear of third and long, I believe, is hampering their ability to be, a little bit riskier on first down, because they don't want that 2nd and 10, right? Like, they are very afraid of that situation. And I think they have to let that go a little bit. Like, at some point, you cannot just baby step this offense into, like, man, we got to get in 3rd and 2, or we got to get in 3rd and 1, or whatever it's got to be. You got to you got to have trust in the guys, whoever it may be, put the wide receivers out there that you want, that, hey, maybe ask them to make some contested catches here, I just feel like there's not a lot of contested opportunities for these wide receivers. Jaden Greathouse, we've seen win contested. Bo Collins had a really good contested catch against Texas A&M, like one of the better, one of the bigger catches of the season, right? The better plays of the season, passing game wise. Like they do, like Mitchell Evans is obviously a contested catch guy. Like you do need to take chances a little bit. And I understand like they're going to be risk averse, right? Marcus Freeman, that's kind of his thing. Like whatever you do, don't turn the ball over, right? And Riley Leonard in the last 3 games, like if he's done anything, he hasn't put the ball in danger, right? So there's that, but there also has to be a mix of things that you can do. It's like you can't be afraid of mistakes all the time. And I understand like Notre Dame's defense is one of the best in the nation, but like for me, it's like then trust them.
Yes.
Give them an opportunity to earn the trust of like, hey, if you slip up somewhere, then we'll take care of it for you. And we will get off the field and that's okay. Like try to do this stuff. Tom Frawley, he wants to see slip and bubble screens, wheel routes to incorporate most gifted offensive players on the team, Love and Price, plus the seam routes to Greathouse and Collins will be open versus Stanford. It is interesting, like haven't seen 4 verts, haven't seen wheel routes really from Notre Dame.
No.
Like that is a good point on the wheel routes. We haven't seen the 4 verticals for Notre Dame, especially like you're playing a lot of cover 3 teams, a lot of single high teams. You can get got with verts on that sort of thing. So these are good points by Tom Frawley. I just think being a little bit more the opposite of risk averse. What is the opposite of averse?
Aggressive,
Risk,
I guess, right?
Aggressive. Take some risks. Go out there. Yeah, do that stuff.
Not reckless, but just I think perfect example of you want to be aggressive in the situation to say, hey, we're gonna go for it on 4th down, right?
Right.
I don't have a problem with that. I had a problem. In that situation, I said I think I probably would have probably would have punted in that situation. But I don't have a problem with going for it on 4th and a long 2. I have a problem with the call. Yeah. So if you're going to go for that, perfect time to run some kind of play action where you're leaking a guy out and trying to go for something there.
Perfect time to have something that's been installed specifically for
this is the time. It's like, hey, guess what? Especially when you just ran a fourth and short and you ran that exact same play, like run some other thing where they think they're getting the same thing again. They're geeked up to do it. There you go. Hit something there, right? It's just like, obviously we've seen Denbrock kind of like set them up and do these kind of things too. So I think that would have been a perfect example. I think being aggressive in that way, throwing the ball, I think is totally fine in those kind of situations because that's how you can kind of hit stuff, right? Like, and I think if we're looking at just overall what, sorry, I'm trying to think of what Vac you were just saying about like, what Tom was mentioning about the seam stuff. Like that is stuff that is going to be like, their safeties are not good. Like they're guys who are downhill guys. If you make them open up and turn and run, they're not great. They're not great.
Yeah.
They're basically like small linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
That's who they have at safety right now. And so you are going to be able to attack them down the seams. And they've gotten beaten by a lot of the big plays they've given up have been there because their outside corners have been all right. Right. It's the safeties that have been the biggest problem. So yeah, like I think that's something that is there. Obviously Denbrock was, when we're talking about like wheel routes and seam stuff and 4 verts, LSU was like just a cornucopia of that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I do understand you're not going to do it as much with this team, with Riley Leonard, with the O-line, all of that. But it has to kind of get to that against, especially in these next 2 weeks. It has to, because if you don't do that, it's like what are you going to do if like Notre Dame could still win this game's fine without doing it. That's fine. They can still win out without doing it. They really could, because based on the schedule. But what happens when you play a real team and then all of a sudden you have to take those risks in order to do it? You never did it the whole year. Like you gotta get to that point now. You gotta get to that point.
Like that's what a good team does, right? Like, and I think I put in the kind of in the prompt to the show, going from good to great. Like they're a good team right now, right? They're a good team. In my opinion, there's lots of good teams like Notre Dame in college football this year, right? Who are just like a perfect example is like Louisville playing Notre Dame and SMU in back-to-back weeks. Like I think Louisville, Notre Dame, and SMU, like they are all kind of in the same kind of tier. Like Notre Dame could have lost to Louisville. They could lose to SMU, right? Like there's matchup stuff, right? But just generally speaking, like SMU's 5-1 or 4-1 or whatever they are, and now Notre Dame is 4-1 and Louisville's 3-2. But like Louisville lost both games by a touchdown, right? It's not like Notre Dame is clearly better than Louisville or they're clearly better than SMU. Like they're just a fine team. They're fine, right? The thing that's holding Notre Dame back is the fact that they can't throw the ball in a way that scares teams.
Yeah,
they can't. And they can come up with points. They scored 31 against Louisville. Got some short fields on that, right? You had a 4-yard touchdown drive, right? So like, for one of your touchdowns. When you're not playing Purdue, you got 28 points against Miami. You got 23 points against A&M, and you got 14 points against against NIU, right? Like if you can't score a bunch, like you're going to have a ceiling, like you're just going to be limited there. And as I listen to people talk about Notre Dame as far as being a playoff team, and will an 11-1 Notre Dame make the playoff? Yes, they will. But you want to be a team where it's like people are saying like, I want to see Notre Dame in the playoff. I actually want to see them compete in the playoff against some of these better teams. Like, if they match up against Miami or they match up against Georgia or Alabama or however it shakes out, right? I want to see that, right? Yeah, I was talking on with my friend on the Untitled pod yesterday about that. That was the thing about the 05 team. It's like everyone wanted to see that 05 team play whoever because of that offense and the way they could move the ball offensively. And I feel like it's possible, right? But I don't think they'll ever be as good of a throwing team as that 05 team, clearly. But at the same time, you can make strides towards that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm looking for. It's like, let's make strides towards being a team that's like, man, this team's dangerous. Like, you don't have to worry about some 16-14 result against a team like Stanford. It's like you want to start every game. It's like Notre Dame has 28 points. Can the other team get to 28? And that's where you want to start. And you can't start there with Notre Dame right now.
Well, and I think, we mentioned before too, Denbrock has done a great job with the opening script stuff. And they've really done well. And they've scored, 4 or 5 games. They've got points on the opening drive. And that's great. And I would agree with, Stephen Sholkowski is right now, the team is built to win 17-14 type games. That is. And he also mentioned too that, the one time they tried to stretch the field aggressively for NIU, it backfired. And I totally understand how people would take that. But that's also context of that time of the game and all that you saw from Leonard before that. So that has to go into that kind of decision making. And also too, I mean, as Greg has pointed out before, that wasn't indicative of what we've seen from Leonard since then. That was just like the biggest duck you've seen from him all year.
It's a terrible throw.
So there is a time and place for all of these things. And so, yeah, you don't want to do things when, be over aggressive when you don't have to. Like, if you can just run the ball down someone's throat, yeah, do it. Like, yeah, go ahead. I think that's what Notre Dame should stay in their lane and be like, we're a running team. We have Love, Price, Leonard. Like, stop us. But teams are going to gear up to stop you. What can you do to counter that in order to create stuff? And you have to be able to do some of it. You can't just be a team that just says, like, man, we have 3 attempts that are 10 yards down the field or more in a game. That's just not a way. You can't play football like that. You can't. Even Navy, the reason why Navy and Army have, like, their offenses have kind of exploded this year is, like, they are hitting the play action and they are doing these things now that they hadn't before, right? So it has to be part of it, or else you do have that, you can win 17-14 types games, but that's also how you lose. That's also how you can lose a game by one bad turnover, one, a bad mistake. Someone just makes one mistake, one mental error on defense. A guy misses a tackle, and then boom, you lose the game. Like, that's not how you want to play every week, especially against teams that you should be better than, right? Like, Notre Dame is favored by, Stanford. I don't know. I don't even know what the number is. Actually, I haven't even looked at it. But, like, they're favored by a lot over Stanford for a reason. Because Stanford isn't good, right?
Right.
I just, coincidentally, I put in SMU versus Notre Dame in the Stats Award, his Parker Fleming. I put in his thing there, and Notre Dame is 55% win probability. Like, basically they score 30 and SMU scores 27. And it's like it basically, like, how, if you look at how the numbers match up, it's like, yeah, it would be a close game. And by the way, SMU, they might mess around and win the ACC. Like, it could happen. Like,
they're good.
It could happen, right? So I think, but the bigger thing is that Notre Dame doesn't play SMU and doesn't play too many teams as good as SMU the rest of the year. The closest, really, that if you look at it, like, is probably USC, and they're a very flawed team, and who knows what they're going to be at that point. So what's it going to look like with some of these other teams? Like Notre Dame, there's a reason why Notre Dame is favored in these games by this much. It's because, like, we always say, like, Vegas knows. They always know this thing. It's because, yes, that's what it's supposed to be. So when it's supposed to be like that, it's supposed to be like that for a reason. So you have to be able to exploit these weaknesses of these other teams. You just have to.
Yeah, Notre Dame's better. I mean, that's why. I mean, they are a better team for as the problems that they do have. I mean, Notre Dame's defense makes up the difference for all this stuff in terms of, because look, they're an incredibly good defense. Like, it's hard to score points on them, right? And that's the thing with Notre Dame is, like, Woj on Twitter asked the question, like, what's more likely, right? That Notre Dame loses twice or Notre Dame wins out? What do you think the answer to that is?
I saw that. Great question from him. I think it's probably more that they win out than 2 losses. I think than 2 more losses. Like, I think 1 more loss is probably the most likely scenario.
Yeah,
really. And winning out would be next. And I think 1 more loss or winning out, I think is more. And then I think 2 losses is probably, would be further down. I think I would kind of put them in. I was going to put those other 2 in a higher tier than the other one. would be below that.
Yeah, I think because of Notre Dame's defense.
Yes.
If you can't tell me that teams are going to score more than 20 points, it's hard to pick a Notre Dame to lose to anybody, right? And that's the thing that they have. Like, they do have a defense that limits points. And look, I Navy
Create a lot of havoc, turn the ball over.
Right. Like Navy and
set them
Army,
up, yeah.
that's all good. They have literally played nobody. I mean, like if Notre Dame was playing Purdue every week, you know what I mean? Like that caliber defense, I mean, they would obviously be 5-0, and we would think that we would think that they were a shoo-in for the playoffs, like the top 4, right? Just they're not playing anyone that can challenge them.
Yeah.
And so it's just like I kind of like it because I think it's better for Notre Dame to have their antennas up for the service academies, and B, it's better for the narrative of their schedule and things like that.
Yeah, I wanted to point out too, because I was reading this thing from Bill Connolly on ESPN about he had breakdown of like the 12 unbeaten teams, and obviously Navy and Army are two of them in there.
Yeah.
Navy, their S&P plus strength of schedule to date, 131st. Army, 134th. That's out of 134.
Yeah.
So like they've played bad teams. Yes, they're beating them and they're great and whatever. That's awesome. But they've played bad teams, and it kind of goes back to kind of what we talked about. The AAC sucks. It's a bad conference now. They don't have, and they really aren't going to play too many betters. Like Notre Dame is by far the best team those teams are going to play the rest of the year. And I don't think actually Army doesn't play a Power 4 conference team this year. Like Notre Dame is it for them. And then Navy, hold on, I'm just double checking to see what their schedule, because I can't remember if they did. No, they didn't. And that's it for them too. And I mean, some of it is like these teams don't want to schedule to play those teams. Like,
right.
I mean, why would you
especially now?
Why would you voluntarily play these teams? Probably not. Even if you think about it too, like that's why I'm always like, Shamrock Series, you're playing Army. Yeah, that sounds great because it's like, oh, Yankee Stadium and the 1946 and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, well, they do run a offense that's brutal to prepare for. And then you got 2 triple option teams on the schedule and this and that. And, but I guess it doesn't sell the nostalgia. So
yeah. I mean, it doesn't sell the nostalgia, and it's, you get no credit for beating them. Right now, it's good that they are, like I said, they're both undefeated, so people won't simply wave it away. But it's like, yeah, just generally speaking, you don't want to make that move, right? You want to do something you'll get credit for, right?
Yeah.
And like you just don't get credit for playing them close, beating them close. Like it doesn't add to it doesn't add to your program. It doesn't add to what you're trying to do. You don't even get to prepare. Like preparing for them is time out of preparing for like any other team. Like Marcus Freeman said, they took time over the bye to put in triple option stuff. You don't want to do that, right? You don't want to take time out of your schedule to prepare for a game that's three weeks away. Time is important, and if you don't have the time for your small business or your social media company, Jamie, to devote to your media side, you want to outsource that, right? And you want to go with the best people. And the best people are VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106.
Man,
Let's
shout
see.
out Tyler Borgman because he was all over that. He put that incoming way before that SIG even started. So good on Borgman there.
I used to do it like right at 30 minutes every time, but now I switch it up because people at Rajon's just like jumping on the, he's like, he always says he knows what's coming. You got to switch it up. You got to switch it up. Where's Rajon? He asked the question I wanted to get to about okay, here we go. How close is the defense to the tipping point due to injuries? I think it's a good question because I don't think they are there, right? They're getting closer.
They're definitely getting closer.
Like, first of all, I think losing Botelho and Traore are bad because they are just very good football players.
Yes.
And so just the ability for individuals to do individual great things is you don't have to scheme stuff. They just do great stuff, right? And that's good. Fortunately for Notre Dame, they do have a defensive coordinator that can scheme pressures and that can confuse quarterbacks without having to send 5-6 players, right? They can send 4 and still get the type of pressure that they want. So that's good. And I think Drew Chulamaka's done a good job. And they can also move Josh Burnham over. To be clear, Josh Burnham is a strong side defensive end, and he is not a regular Viper. Just to make that clear. So, but there are
definitely
things
not the third team Viper.
Definitely not third team. No. I mean, he could start at strong side, frankly. So there are things that Notre Dame can do. So I don't think they're at the tipping point. There are things that there are players that I don't want to mention just for the superstition of it, right? I think we can all think of players that come to mind that if Notre Dame were to lose them, that might be a tipping point type situation. What I will say is, like, I think at least on the back end, like I think Leonard Moore's ascension has given Notre Dame a really good buffer there.
Yeah,
I was very impressed with the way he played, especially when the thing I was wondering is, he's only repped the boundary, and then a field guy got hurt, and then Jaden Mickey, who's the other field guy, he's in the portal. So I was like, well, he probably is their third best corner, but he doesn't play over there.
Yeah.
Then he did, and he did a really good job, Jamie. So I guess where like as it stands right now, has your opinion changed on like Notre Dame's ceiling defensively, your expectations of them just kind of week to week, where things stand at the moment?
Yeah, I mean the ceiling isn't as high without Botelho and Traore. I think that's pretty obvious because exactly like you said, right? Like you can just run like it could just be like a standard 1st and 10, and Botelho just wins on a pass rush and gets a sack. Same with Traore. You're just playing it straight up, and then all of a sudden that just happens because of like they win with motor and whatever, right? Like,
yeah,
that's something that you have there. And then obviously too, those guys were, first of all, super productive in making plays for a reason, and also playing on 3rd down as like 2 of the main pass rushers for a reason, right? So when you lose like the 2 guys who are your 2 best edge rushers, it's going to be you're gonna see that it's gonna hurt, like just like when in 2019 when Julian Okwara is out and Dalen Hayes is out for the season. When both those guys go out, it's not going to be as good as it could have been. But it's not to say, because I mean, obviously you look at it where they had, well, now Ade Ogundeji, he's going to get a chance to play on 3rd downs now. And Jameer Jones is going to do it.
Yeah.
And those guys are good players. I mean, were they as good as those other guys? I mean, definitely not as good as Okwara was, right? So that, so the ceiling wasn't high, but they still played at a pretty high level. right? But kind of like similar to now, if one of those guys got hurt, then too, it's like, oh, well, now we're getting, pretty desperate. And the fact that even like Logan Thomas was like, hey, he's going to play 7 plays of garbage time against Purdue, to all of a sudden like, hey, Logan, we're going to need you at some key third downs here.
Yeah.
And basically he's very likely he's going to be a big part of their third down package the rest of the year. That's a big jump. And it's not to say that he hasn't shown some flashes of things, but he's a freshman. Like, there's going to be things where he makes mistakes, and where like Bryce Young, and watching it again and watching him like the Louisville, like, specifically like the end zone copy, man, I thought he was so much better in that game than he was the week before versus Miami, like considerably better. And then also too, like, against Purdue, like he has gotten better each week. So that's encouraging, but there were still plays where he lost contain.
Yes.
He was supposed to go, fight out to see Yap. He didn't get out there. He was supposed to get to be Yap. That is definitely something that happens when, or he took an inside move and it's like, okay, that's great. But then you lose contain. Well, you can't do that. Like, that is crucial. It's like, if you win inside, you better make the play. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I think, like, you're going to have more of that kind of stuff where you weren't seeing that from those other guys. And so it's going to be, more growing pains and all of that. And I do think because they have Sneed, and because they have KVA and what those guys can do as pass rushers too, it's a little bit of a buffer where it shouldn't be as big of a dip as you would normally see with it, because Notre Dame has these depths of these guys who maybe aren't as good as Botello and Traore are, but they're still doing pretty good. And maybe by the end of the year, you might be saying like, man, KVA and Bryce Young, holy, like that, or Logan Thomas too. We could be saying that. I just think that where you'd go into this game and think like, oh my gosh, good luck, Stanford. Like, you're going to block Traore and Botello, where now we're like, yeah, hopefully, Young has another game where he gets better and this and that. Right. So I think that's mainly the thing. And then also too, like you said, at corner, like, you could just see it, like they're an injury or so away. And they've played all these linebackers and they were pretty good when they were down to 3, but the secondary isn't as deep, and up front they aren't as deep. Hopefully helped a bit by Burnham being back.
Yeah.
And eventually Rubio being back.
Yeah. I want to see Rubio dress in this game. Doesn't have to play, but you want to see him dress. Just think like, okay, then he'll be back for Georgia Tech, right? It's kind of like Shrouth. Like, it'd be nice if he had dressed, and it doesn't sound like he's going to be able to. Like, you want to see dress first, then back for the next game. To the point about Bryce Young, like showing stuff when he was doing the right way, he did show a lot. Got sucked inside a little bit, and like this to me is like why Leonard Moore was so impressive, because he didn't make any of those mistakes.
Yeah.
He didn't make one mistake where it's like, even off the ball, where maybe the ball doesn't come to him, where it's like, no, this is cover 2. You got to sink. Like, you know what? Like, Ben Morrison had these airs as a freshman.
No, he had way more. Yeah.
Where he would do, like, it wasn't an ability thing. It's like, no. Like, it's cover 2. You got to sink here. Or it's cover 3. Like, you got to get over top of this or whatever. Or you got to pass this guy. Leonard Moore didn't have any of that. That's, to me, was like as impressive as any of the physical stuff. Just like mentally, to always be on the proper side of the receiver, always be in the right, passing off the zone in the right way. Like, I was very impressed by that. So yeah, the obviously the upside, the ability to have a dude who can just win for you is lessened because you lost those guys. I'm interested to see like if the bye helped out Howard Cross a little bit. I think we've been speculating he's been banged up some. I think he's one where like just a raise in his game would, kind of somewhat offset the loss of, Patojo and Traore.
If he plays like he did against Louisville the rest of the year, that is his A game. Like that,
Yeah.
that's the main thing, right? So yeah, I would say he is a key guy for them because if he's like that, especially like in this game, like I expect Howard Cross to eat in this game. I
Yeah.
expect Anye to eat. Like I expect Mills to eat. Like they're not good. And they're interior three guys, especially with the center out, and then they got to move in a guy who's not good. Like they're going to have a tough time blocking Notre Dame's interior in this game. So I think, yeah, that is definitely something to monitor. And hey, Rayshon pointed it out too.
Yeah, there you go. I think a lot of people going into a game like this have the feeling of, well, there's nothing you can really take from it. I disagree with that. I think a blowout win here would be meaningful. And I think a close win, while it wouldn't be surprising, would also be indicative, in my opinion. Coming off the bye, coming off of, you got, the self scouting and that whole conversation. I think if they come out and it's like 27-20 or whatever, obviously a loss would be, I mean, that'd be pretty indicative. But like a 27-20 win where it's like you're not really in danger of losing, but you're also not pulling away from them kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that would tell me like that's how it's going to be for the rest of the year. Like I would be resigned to that. They're not going to blow out any team. They could lose to any team. Because I think Stanford is the type of team where they aren't coming off a bye. And it was pointed out earlier that they're in a stretch where it's like, man, they've played a lot of tough games. They've traveled a bunch. They've had a string of games. They've had guys injured. Their guys coming back from injury. Like they have got to be beaten up a little bit. I think Notre Dame, if they were able to blow out Stanford, that would show me something. That would show me like, okay, this team might be a hungry team who's looking to do a little bit more than just win out, to hope to eke out games, win 27-20 or 20-13 or whatever it might be, right? Like that would show me something. Curious if you kind of feel the same way, that there's something to actually be taken from the Stanford game should they look really good on Saturday.
Yeah. I think, both of these next two games, I think are really like, going to show a lot because I think like you could to look at the Army and Navy games later on and, just because of the style of how those teams want to play, like it doesn't matter if you win big or not. Like it's just matters that you won, right? Really, like because they're playing to muck it up, and it could just be ugly, and you just got to do whatever you got to do there. But like, it's these teams specifically aren't going to do that. Like Stanford is going to try to like do a bunch of like run a bunch of trick plays and do this and that. They're going to do a ton of motion. They're trying to hit explosives. They're trying to do these things. Georgia Tech is going to throw the ball deep. Like that's what they do. Like Haynes King is going to run the ball like that. They're going to do a lot of these things that are going to challenge you on offense where they're aggressive, and on defense, those defenses aren't good, specifically against the pass, as we mentioned. So if it's a close game, it's probably, I mean, not even probably, I would say like almost certainly because Notre Dame didn't pass well enough to make it a blowout, right? So I think that's one of those things where we're going to learn a lot about what the offense can do, because if they're not taking advantage of this, it's pretty tough to say like, well, they still got 5 more games left after this. It's like, nah, after 7 games and you already had the bye, your first bye and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of who you are.
Yeah.
It's kind of who you are. And you might have some players step up and that can change some things or whatever, right? Because obviously there's always like, the phase-ons or, could kind of step up and help you. But it wasn't like phase-on, even him stepping up and helping Notre Dame, that didn't like fundamentally change the offense, right? So
right.
it's what you see here. I 100% agree with you. If it's like, if they win by like 27-10, 27-17, something like that, that is not, that is a sign that they are going to have to grind it out the rest of the way. And if they win by like 3 scores or more, then it's probably a sign that like, hey, I think they're on the right track. They're doing the right things. And I think it's going to be like, there's a good chance that they can take advantage and win how they need to win the rest of the way.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, we're gonna end it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit the like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell so whatever it is, we're gonna go live. I'll be back tomorrow with the happy hour show. It's gonna be a fun show. Happy to do the happy hour again. And then Jamie and I will be back on Saturday with the post game show. I'll be back on Sunday with the morning after recap show. Lots of good content. We're going to be live every day from now until Monday. So you're going to want to subscribe to the channel. Get some more good content out there. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.